And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Wednesday morning's flying weather. A lot of IFR here out over the Bering Sea. All of the Aleutians right up into the Alaska Peninsula. As you can see, VFR here along the west coast until you get up to about Kivalina there. And from there on up to the Central Arctic coast, marginal VFR. Good VFR into the interior here, but along the Alaska range, picking up some marginal VFR, and that becomes IFR here for the North Gulf Coast into western Prince William Sound. A little bit IFR there, just east and northeast of Kodiak Island, and IFR across all of the Panhandle. And for the afternoon, the area of IFR out here to the west edges eastward here into Nunivak Island, right along the Yukon Delta coast there, Cape Romanzoff, St. Lawrence Island up through the Bering Strait now, and on up toward Point Hope and Cape Lisburne. A little bit of marginal VFR for the western Arctic coast, otherwise good conditions off to the east. That extends southward all the way into the northern Susitna Valley across the western Alaska range down to Bristol Bay. A little bit of IFR now edged westward, forecast to anyway, into the east side of Kodiak, Fognak Islands, probably the Barren Islands as well, and a narrow band of IFR up along the North Gulf Coast as well as the northern Panhandle with marginal conditions on down toward Dixon Entrance. And for the morning hours Thursday, IFR here along the south side of the western Brooks Range with VFR, central, eastern, north slope, and Arctic coast, as well as the eastern Brooks Range. And some marginal VFR still along the western central Arctic coast. Otherwise, some IFR here sliding on up in toward Denali Park across the Talkeetna Mountains, and that extends on down into portions of the Madnuska Valley and along the North Gulf Coast, southern Seward Peninsula, right into Kodiak Island, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, northern Panhandle there, Haines on up to the passes, IFR. And then for the afternoon, that all burns off to VFR there under the afternoon sun there for the southeast coast and the North Gulf Coast. A little bit of marginal VFR here over south central Alaska and the Alaska range. Not too much though. Generally looking at a good VFR day here over the interior from Bristol Bay right on up to the eastern Arctic coast. IFR sliding eastward here into the central north slope and from the central coast eastward to about Dead Horse or so, give or take either side. Otherwise, good IFR here, Bering Strait, southern Seward Peninsula, right on down across all the Bering Sea, central and western Aleutians. Eastern Aleutians a little bit better, just calling for marginal conditions there, and marginal VFR right up into Kuskokwim Bay. And for passes up north for the Brooks Range, Anatuvik and Adigan, VFR also for Lake Clark and Merrill. Optimistically going VFR for Rainy, Windy, Isabel. Mentasta now, VFR, look for possible lower conditions on the southern entrance. And for Tanita, marginal VFR at times throughout the entire day. And for Portage, marginal VFR with the lowest conditions, again, possibly IFR on the eastern side. And for Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet there for the eastern Arctic coast, 4,000 feet into the Brooks Range, and then about 6,000 feet here over the eastern interior down to the Gulf of Alaska and the Panhandle. And then out over the Bering Sea, freezing levels range from 8,000 feet around St. Lawrence Island to 10 or 11,000 feet there for the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Icing with that system and moisture sliding northeastward here, pushing a pretty good area, considerable moderate rime icing into the western Arctic coast, north slope, western Brooks Range, right on down into the Kobuk, Selawik Valleys, Kotzebue Sound area, with isolated moderate extending southward there across the lower Yukon River and the deltas there right into Kuskokwim Bay, and then a break and then another system here pushing elevated icing potentials into the southwest Bering Sea and western Aleutians. And from there, looking at the jet stream, High pressure here over the southwest interior at 33,000 feet. So we've got westerly flow coming across the Bering Sea that splits. One branch diving southeastward here across the eastern Aleutians as it comes up to this ridge, and then the other one kind of heading off to the northeast there with this low sliding northeastward. So 60 to 70 or 80 knot winds there, St. Lawrence Island right into the northwest interior. Coming back around that high north-northeast at 60 knots. Right across the Susitna Valley and Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island area, and then westerlies to west-northwesterlies, cutting in across Prince of Wales Island and Dixon Entrance. And for 9,000 feet, much lighter winds here for the Panhandle and Northern Gulf up into the at least the southeastern half of the state here. Back to the west, we've got westerlies of 45 knots into the northern Bering Sea, turn southwest at about 40 across the northwest interior. Much lighter over the eastern Bering Sea. Pretty light here for the eastern Aleutians, but westerlies picking up to 45 knots from about Amchitka Island to the west. And for 3,000 feet, about the same pattern here. We got 35 to 40 knot west-southwest winds. They're mostly westerlies there for the western Aleutians. And then westerlies again turn southwest, about 40 to 45 knots there, northern Bering Sea, Seward Peninsula right up into the northwest coast and western Arctic coast with light winds to the east and to the south, becoming pretty variable here. They extend right on down the southeast coast with this system staying to the south. Turbulence-wise, with those gusty southwest winds, look for considerable moderate here from St. Lawrence Island right on up into the northwest interior along the coast there, western Brooks Range, especially Point Hope, Cape Lisburne to Point Lay, and then light to isolated moderate here for the western Aleutians to about Adak